of course. And I was thinking about things like, should I have a note card, blah, blah, blah. But it occurred to me that if you have a really good tip for researching a novel, why don't you send me a note card or an IM with it on, and I will pull all the ideas together in a note card, and then Harry can distribute it to the whole group. I thought, if you have any ideas, let me know by IM or note card. Now, I asked Harry if I could talk about this because researching my novel, which is set in ancient Rome, was one of the things I really enjoyed about writing. And the first draft was written over 25 years ago. So in my research, I have moved from books to the internet, and I found that a really interesting experience. I also found that even once I had all this lovely information in my fingertips, getting it into the novel was not necessarily straightforward. But I'm going to start with sources. The odds are that whatever novel you're writing, let's say it's a historical novel, it's going to be in a time and place that you already have a feel for. You possibly know it quite well. And it's also possible that the research is what you're looking forward to the most. I don't think there are many writers who say they hate the research stage. So, like I say, the odds are you've got an idea about where you're going to start. And I'm going to use as an example the Tudor era. I mean, I will read any novel that has Tudor in the title. And there's loads of them out there, especially on Kindle Unlimited. Let's say then, you've read a whole heap of these novelists. Many of them, bless their little cotton socks, produce author's notes detailing their own research. So you have excellent starters there. A novelist you like is going to give you your first ideas. Now, I said for the title, I was being tongue-in-cheek. I think librarians are just wonderful people. I was a librarian for one wonderful year of my life. Your local library might not specialise in the Tudor era, but they will be able to get hold of books for you. I discovered, for example, that anyone who has an ID and a proof of address can get a reader's card for the most prestigious and awesome library in the whole of the UK, the British Library in London. You can even get access to their most precious manuscripts if you can supply a reference from someone like an academic backing your reason for seeing those materials. If you've ever been a member of a university, they may well provide you with that reference. And of course, if you've ever been a member of a university, you've probably got automatic lifelong access to their libraries still. I found, for example, that I can still get into the Bodleian Library in Oxford. To get physical access to it, I did need a little bit more paperwork. But once I had that, and once I had the backing of my old college, I just went down, swore the wonderful oath in which you have to do there, where you promise not to set fire to the library, and I was in. I now live in Qatar, in the Middle East, as you know. And as an experiment, I wanted a book by a scholar called Susan Treggiari, who writes about women in the ancient world. So I put in a request for her recently published biography of the mother of Brutus, Servilia. 95 quid, can't afford that. I found that all I had to do was ask. They got it for me on interlibrary loan. And of course, the other advantage that libraries have is that they're amazing places to work. There is something about being surrounded by books. And although, like I say, I was a little bit rude about librarians in the title, I have never met a librarian who didn't just love being asked questions about books. So I would always start in a library. Of course, the internet does help make research easy. Oh yes, the internet is your friend, but it isn't a librarian, and sometimes you need a librarian rather than a friend. The internet is a friend who doesn't have very much discrimination. Sometimes it's bewildering. Sometimes it's over the top. There are, of course, the usual sources. They stand firm and comforting. You can generally trust a university department, the BBC. I found a journal repository called JSTOR. It was so useful. I actually spent money. I subscribed for a year so that I could download as many articles as I liked. But JSTOR will give you a limited number of articles per month and not charge you. So it's worth checking it out. Oh yeah, happy Guy Fawkes Day. The day when the whole UK lights bonfires and fireworks to celebrate the fact that we hanged a dozen Catholics 400 years ago. Marvellous. JSTOR is capital JSTOR. And when I compile that note card, I'll make sure that I put the link on it. Excellent. Time for a birthday, Greece. You get free fireworks. And the question then that you're all saying is, do you use Wikipedia? And the answer is, yes, of course I use Wikipedia. Who doesn't use Wikipedia? I'm human. There is nothing wrong with using Wikipedia. In my experience, teachers are far too quick to deride it. But I think you just need to teach students how to go and check the references before, they write a game-changing essay about it. I directed my sixth formers once to an article about Pericles building the Parthenon on the Acropolis in Athens. And by the next page, the little monkeys had gone and changed it so that in the middle of this very worthy article, there was a reference to Pericles only employing dwarves to build the Parthenon because when they fell over, it made him laugh. So they took that down very quickly. There are archives in all sorts of unexpectedly useful places. I don't know if you know the writer Lindsay Davis. Back in the 90s, she was a favourite of mine. She wrote about a Roman PI, and I thought her books were fabulous. But it was pre-everyone using the internet. So at a book signing, I did ask her, where did she get all her information? And she said, I write off to people. And I said, what do you mean? She said, well, I wondered how the Romans brushed their teeth. So I wrote off to toothpaste manufacturers, and one of them sent me a leaflet on the history of toothpaste and toothbrushing. And I thought, yes, of course, you'd ask an expert like that. I did try a little experiment the other day. I emailed Colgate, and 5 days later they sent me back an email that was very disappointing because it was quite clear they hadn't read mine, and their history of toothpaste only went back to 1805, but never mind. If I wanted to, I think I would try other manufacturers. So, what do you do then? You've learned everything there is to know about Henry VIII or salt mining in Roman times, and you splurge it all down onto the page and you amaze your reader with how clever you are, or maybe not. And I thought, as I was writing this, that there were three main pitfalls. And the big one is TMI, too much information. I find when I'm reading historical novelists in particular, they just love describing battles, which is fine if you like battles. So I give myself permission to skip long, detailed descriptions. But I came across a particular author, noted for a very popular series set in ancient Rome, and I found this author's note. No bibliography is appended. First of all, because it is not usual to do so in the case of a novel. But more importantly, any bibliography would run to many pages. 180 volumes of the lower classical library in my possession would be but a small beginning. I will only say, where possible, I have gone to the ancient sources. And I have treasured the modern works of many fine historians. My scholarship will be obvious enough to those qualified to judge without a bibliography. However, should any reader be interested, he or she may write to me in care of the publisher for a bibliography. And I read that and felt as though the author had just slapped my wrist. Obviously, my scholarly knowledge was not enough to be able to check it without a bibliography. But this same author, in her favour, put a massive glossary and, amongst other things, completely convinced me that it is impossible for a Roman to wear a toga and underpants at the same time, in a fascinating piece of experimental archaeology. Not that I'm a man myself, but this novelist asserts that one cannot manipulate toga and underpants simultaneously for various important bodily functions, and she convinced me. But I couldn't I couldn't resist including a parody written soon after her novels began to be published. "The Ides of March are come," rasped Gaius Julius Caesar. Gaius Julius Caesar. He said the name to himself. How he loved it. Gaius was, of course, his praenomen, a sort of personal name, given on the Dies Lustricus, the 9th day after his birth. "Hi, guys," his pals would wittily shout to him as he made his way from the Circus Maximus along the Via Triumphalis, skirting the Palatinum on the left and the Mons Caelis on the right, before turning left into the Via Sacra opposite the Palus Cerioli, the swamp below the Carinae and the Fagator, and through the Velia into the Forum Romanum with its strangely skewed ground design. And I could go on. Now, I've got the whole parody available for any of you who wish to indulge in such guilty pleasure. But I think it illustrates beautifully that if you do splurge everything down, you are kind of opening yourself up there. So my second pitfall I've called burning witches. And this is the temptation to take something that everyone knows happened really and put it into your book because it is so much more dramatic than the truth. And the execution of witches gives us a great example of this. There's a certain generation of those born in the UK who, if you say Monty Python and the Holy Grail, will immediately start saying, "Burn the witch," in our best cackling voices, and then go on to declare that if she weighs as much as a duck, then she's a witch. But in the witch craze which swept England, Scotland, and later even got to the eastern USA in the 16th and 17th centuries, actually, witches were hanged, not burned at the stake, just as in the case of the Salem witch trials. However, a not very intense Google search brought me to a website, I think it was the third I checked, which assured me that the victims of the Salem witch trials had indeed been burned at the stake. There is a grim fascination with the idea of burning another human being, although as far as I could find, this was actually a punishment more associated with the charge of heresy. Now, I find that I can easily override any desire to describe executions. But I have to admit, a scene in which someone is burned is probably going to appeal to someone who loves the drama and the sheer horror of it. And indeed, there is a very gruesome and pathos-filled scene of a burning in Wolf Hall by Hilary Mantel. So, yeah, it's like fake news. And the third pitfall then, the voice authentic. Even after all this research, even after avoiding the temptation to dramatize things which are already pretty dramatic, in a historical novel, you have to decide how your characters are going to talk. You know so much, it's so tempting to show off your knowledge. You've learned about all the weird and wonderful words used, chronologically appropriate oaths, references to the then current affairs dropped casually into conversation. If you're writing that Tudor book, are you really going to say thee and thou? if I set my book in ancient Rome and I'm going to just drop the odd Latin word in, it's so tempting. The trouble is, very few people have managed to do this successfully. The one person I would say that I've read who does this superbly is the author Georgette Heyer, who wrote lightweight Regency romances. She once famously said, "I think myself I ought to be shot for writing such nonsense, but it's unquestionably good escapist literature, and I think I should rather like it if I was sitting in an air raid shelter or recovering from flu." And I think there's nothing wrong with writing books that help people in air raid shelters or recovering from flu. But she has the ability to adapt the idioms and the expressions just enough to give you the idea that you, the reader, are cleverly understanding this word without sacrificing clarity. So I just took a little speech from the novel Bath Tangle. I liked that young man, did not you? There was something particularly pleasing about his manners, which I thought very easy and frank. He has an air of honest manliness too, which in these days of fribbles and countercoxcombs, I own I find refreshing. Now, I don't think anyone around this table probably knows what a fribble or a countercoxcomb is without Googling them. But the point is that you don't need to. She's put it in a context that makes it quite clear that someone is approving of someone else, and that's all you need to know. Try some out. I could not do it, not like her. And so I went for the alternative. And that is, don't really worry about it. Write your dialogue in an idiom you find comfortable. Probably it won't jar with your readers unless you have, I don't know, 14th century peasants exclaiming holy shark spray Batman or something like that. For example, I'm reading Robert Harris's Imperium trilogy at the moment. And I did notice the expression, not a penny more. It didn't annoy me. It didn't leap out particularly. I'm far more likely to be annoyed by a basic fact being incorrect. So I can't watch the History Channel because they always describe Julius Caesar as Rome's first emperor. But then I'm the sort of person who nitpicks over the correct use of the words fewer and less. And it's to do with singular and plural. Less cake, fewer cakes. So, at some point then, despite all your research, here's the fun bit. You're going to have to make something up. You have looked and searched and read, and nobody can tell you what the spread of small villages of North Africa was like in the 1st century BC. Give it your best guess. Enjoy having a free hand. When you reach this point in your research, you probably know most of what is to be known about your chosen topic. And you can have a pretty good guess at it. Who's going to say you know? Well, if someone had written their thesis on population centres in Rome and North Africa, let's face it, you're not going to meet them at a party. And if they do read your book, then you can let them tell you all about everything that you got wrong. But, you know, there is a reason that their thesis never got published. And here's the thing about writing a book which involves research. Someone will spot your mistakes. It doesn't matter. People who are nice will write to you a polite email, and you will write back thanking them nicely. I'm sure that the novelist Stephen Saylor is absolutely fed up with having people point out to him that, unlike in his book Arms of Nemesis, the Mediterranean has no tides. But that blunder has not stopped me buying every single book that Saylor has ever written. People who are rude may lambast you, but you don't need to take any notice of rude people. And at that point, I've come to the end of all advice that I have to give. Hey, nice work, Robinette. And like I say, if people want to send me their tips, I will put everything down on a useful note card, hand it to Harry, and she can distribute it to the group. And of course, if anyone's got any questions, please ask. And nobody does. Brilliant.
I was listening, but I was also fixing something I caught in my story. But thank you for letting us listen to your voice about librarians and information.
Go for it, Grease. Thank you very much indeed. Well, that's it. I better type that's it in case Harry's still not hearing.
I do like British accents, having British blood in my American blood after all. I mean, I was born on the British Day of Revolution, so.
Well, Grease, I'm quite happy to sit here and recite Ozymandias as a background to your writing, if that would help. Thank you, everyone. Okay,
Sure.
well, expect a note card to come round soon with tips and tricks, and I'll try and remember to put links to anything that I think any of you might find useful.